Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors coming to you with a rebound relationship series titled Understanding Relationship Failure 10 Reasons. This is going to be a collective lecture, and it is divided into multiple videos. So, you will need to listen to the first part, the second, the third, and so on. So, understanding relationship failure is important because if you don't take the time to self assess what went wrong with the relationship, you are doomed to repeat the same types of mistakes. Understanding relationship failure also points to the fact that most relationships fail oftentimes with our contribution, but it could also be that you just really chose the wrong person, or the person was just not ready to be in relationship, or the person could have chosen you as maybe a fallback plan until they were able to marry someone else. So I want you to take some time to listen to the full series. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will respond. Also, take some time to hit the subscription button and then hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos. Thank you for visiting the channel. So, this lecture series is subject to fair use, where I am commenting, criticizing, teaching, and pursuing scholarship on this topic. So I am in the process of applying to a doctoral program, and so all of this is good practice. So, how relationships should work, part 2, the need for preparation, the marriage contract. And I put contract in with an S at the end because there are different types of marriage contracts that you will have to fulfill, or consider rather, in addition to the one where you just signed an application, you stood before a judge, and you were married. So really consider what what's presented in this audio, and take notes if you can, and just remember just key ideas as well. This part of the lecture is about legal information to give you a sense of the responsibilities in and of marriage. Before you enter marriage, you must know what is required of you to sustain that marriage. Of course, you need to make sure that you have a good understanding of what marriage is for the both of you. You will notice in this audio that some people don't believe in long-term marriage, but marriage is understood to be sort of like a long-term status in a sense. This information is also important because if your partner decides to create an infidelity and pursue it fully and long term, you can expect conflict to arise regarding surviving spouse, living will, durable power of attorney, and intestate succession. And I discussed all of these concepts within this audio. I use the phrase create an infidelity because it is a created product. If you think about it, it is a creative product. Anyway, I mean, if you think about it, how many websites now, like Ashley Madison, say have an affair, you know, and now having an affair or cheating, infidelity are all commercially monetized products. So when you think about stepping out on your partner and deciding to cheat or commit adultery, you are essentially creating an infidelity. And the more that you stay with it, the more that you nurse it, you mother it till its end, whatever that end looks like. Who inherits in marriage when the husband or wife dies and there is an issue or child from an extramarital affair? How does the extramarital affair affect everything? There are common law statutes. There are different types of marriages. So it is important that if you are the surviving spouse of something, of the marriage partnership that you inherit full. But what happens then when your spouse, decides to change the will or make his affair partner a beneficiary in the will? So we're going to discuss this in this audio. So basic contract law involves both an offer and acceptance between offerer and offeree. If you want more information about contract law, just go to any bookstore and get a contracts 101 book. But an offer is made to an individual, a member of a group, or to the public. That's the offerer. And acceptance is the offeree must have knowledge of the offer. Acceptance is made to an intended offeree. With bilateral contracts, offers cannot be accepted in silence, and however, an agreement can be accepted through conduct in implied consent. So when you initially marry, it's between offerer and offeree, basically. There's a person who proposes, and then there's a person who responds, right? But the offeree must have knowledge of the offer. So you both have knowledge of the offer in terms of proposing to marriage. Acceptance, you accepted the offer. But when you think about bilateral contracts, offers cannot be accepted in silence. So when you think about the partner stepping out on their married partner, and then developing a relationship, that initial partner is not accepting that actual infidelity relationship, right? That's another type of contract. There's one contract between the two married partners, and then there's a contract between the married partner and the affair partner. Well, if you look at it like this, man and woman, if the man cheats on his wife, if the husband cheats on his wife with an affair partner, the wife did not agree to that. She did not agree to that. Offers cannot be accepted in silence. She didn't say at the beginning of the relationship while he was proposing, okay, I will accept your proposal and marry you, and I also accept the fact that you're going to cheat too. No. That comes later as a counter argument. So an agreement can be accepted through conduct in implied consent. Now, she can, once she finds out that he has cheated and decides to continue on in a relationship, through her implied consent by staying within the relationship, she's basically, agreeing through conduct. But the initial proposer, respondent, offerer, offeree relationship was between two people, not three people. The counter argument, the counter offer, is offerees can make a counter offer, but if it is rejected and the person making the original offer does not reinstate the original offer, the offeree cannot accept that offer. So if we were looking at the husband and the wife, and right before they got married, he made a counter offer. I'm going to marry you, but I'm going to keep someone on the side. Okay? And then she makes an offer, well, no, you can't keep anybody on the side. Or she could say, I'm going to keep somebody on the side. So if he rejects her offer, if it is rejected and the person making the original offer does not reinstate the original offer, which is just to marry and keep somebody on the side, then the offeree cannot accept that offer. So this is a little confusing, but think about it like this. Think about it like if you are not in a relationship, right? Say, for instance, you are just engaged. Proposer and respondent. Someone proposes to you. And then it looks like you're going good. You're going to get married and all that good stuff. And then all of a sudden, he says, let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see. Well, that's a counter argument to the initial contractual relationship that you just formed. He gave you a ring. In contract law, it will be consideration. He proposed, you accepted, he gave you a ring. Okay, there was nothing in that original contract that says that you should expect for him to have a side chick, or or he should expect for you to have a side dude. No, that's a counter offer. So then if you accept that counter offer at the time of contract formation, then you must continue to agree with it. However, if you decide when he says, let's just wait and see, and uh, you should decide not to go forward in that contract, because as I noted in the previous audio part one, let's wait and see is essentially saying, I think I have somebody that I might be considering, but she's not really coming around. So I'm just going to keep you on hold until she decides she will come around. And when she comes around, then I'll drop you. That's a counteroffer. So look at sometimes, relationships in terms of counter arguments as well. Dating relationships are not truly under contract. They are conduct based. They are optional. There is a demand for them with a high supply. However, engagement and marriage relationships are contracts. There is an offer and acceptance between two people. Marriage contracts are more enforceable. But you can also say that if a recent proposer, decided to call off the engagement, he could go to court to get that ring back. So that could easily also be enforceable. If contract law applies, then it is important to get as much information about the intended relationship prior to accepting the offer. This means information about finances and health is important, but sex and sex practices, likes and dislikes is also important. Not everyone likes everything. So a lot of times I have a chapter in my book about how they porn the relationship, how your partner porns the relationship. You were under one understanding, and then all of a sudden you get into the relationship and it's something completely different. They begin to porn the relationship. So that's something that you want to make sure that you ask the right questions about. A lot of times we jump into relationships because it's just much more convenient and there's much more ease, but then we think about the consequences of that decision much later. If you moved somebody into your house and they stay in your house for a significant amount of time and receive mail, you would have to get them evicted, because by law they are your resident and you just can't kick them out. So that's why you have to prepare and understand the laws, because it is very easy to get caught up in the court system just from a live-in situation, a common law situation, and of course a marriage situation. Convenience. So you also need to understand your partner's belief systems. That means religion, spiritual, male, female roles, views on open relationships, views on infidelity and cheating, and views about kids. That is something, if male and female roles is maybe easier to reconcile, because we all sort of fulfill certain male female roles, right? The woman cooks, the man takes out the trash, that type of thing. However, many people are engaging in open relationships. I am not for open relationships. I am not for infidelity and cheating. If you want to be in an open relationship, don't get married. Just adopt a dating rotation that you see people doing now, where they are not committed to one person and they are essentially in an open relationship. What I realized about open relationships in terms of convenience is that some partners want somebody at the house, keeping the home fires burning, making sure the food is on the table, making sure the clothes are ironed and washed, making sure they can have some stable sex, even if it's even if it is predictable, as long as they know they can always have sex, and even though they might still go out with an affair partner and have even more sex, they just like the idea of having that kind of stability. However, the person who is at home, it affects them a lot differently. I'm quite sure it is that open relationship is linked to some sort of health risks. The fact that you know that your man or your woman is going out every weekend and having sex with somebody else, I promise you that that bothers you. So it's important to understand people tell you who they are. If they are people who cheat, they tell you that much early. If they are people who don't like kids, they tell you that very early. There are some men who will not conform to the standard dictates of marriage. There are some women who will never submit under marriage. There are some men who have their own rules about submission, and many people do not follow the traditional standards of marriage. And I understand that's kind of like the going trend today. Buck tradition. We don't need tradition anymore. We can just go our own way. And you have different types of movements, that are going on today. However, when they get into these relationships, it's so ironic. They end up fulfilling the standard dictates of marriage. So it's the strangest thing. Some people do not want to marry, but marry anyway for comfort and convenience. So I've noticed that a lot of videos have been about men. They don't want you. They really want help. It really does matter where the man is in his financial, economic, mental, psychological state. That if he has to move in with you, that means right there he's not taking responsibility for himself as an adult. Not just you, but himself as an adult. That he does not have enough wherewithal to keep a place, keep a job, keep an apartment, job, pay his bills, etc. Acceptance. Some people want to live together or shack before marriage. That was my issue. I did not really intentionally set out to shack. It just, okay, I guess we're going to get married. Let's go on ahead and shack, But it did not produce or convert into marriage. Some people want to date for years before marriage. Some people are bisexual. Can you live with something like that? Can you live with your partner having sex with a same-sex partner? Even though he wants to be married to you, can you live with something like that? I can't live with that. That is cheating. It's still cheating. I know they want to put nature on it, biology on it. They were born like that. Okay, whatever system you want to believe, that's fine. However, if you're married, going out and having sex with a same-sex partner or another or the opposite partner while you are married is still considered cheating. Some people believe that family is a greater priority than a wife or a husband. So sometimes you'll see the wife place the children above the husband. But there is a hierarchy. God above man, man above woman, woman above the kids, right? And so you can't put your kids above your husband, right? Some people believe in exercising a heavy hand. That means domestic violence. It is a belief system. It has its root in some philosophy. All women must submit, even if I have to make them. So they show you who they are very early. If you decide to still marry that person after they hit you that first time while you were in a long-term dating relationship, then you have accepted that. You have accepted that. I know that sounds like I'm being mean. I'm not trying to be mean, but as soon as he hit you and you turned around and married him anyway, you accepted it. When I realized that my partner was not struggling with cheating, that it was actually his lifestyle, his belief system, I said, I can't accept that. And I knew I could not write and publish these books still connected to him and in relationship with him. What sense would that make? Some people believe that you are good for now. Sure, I'll marry you. Meaning that some people, like I said, like I say in one of my audios, that if you give somebody an ultimatum, they can still marry you. That doesn't necessarily mean that they have actually married you. That they're just marrying you to take up some time, fill some gap, fill some space, and then when the person they really want comes along, they're going to leave you and marry that other person. Some people just want to be single, right? So you have some people who go out and date and do a lot of dating. And it seems like they give off the air that they're trying to pursue transitioning from single to maybe a long-term relationship. But you also have people who will date you for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, 5 years, and they still consider themselves single. That's something that you have to think about, because if you decide to continue in that relationship, you are basically accepting those terms. Understand what you are accepting. Be careful what you accept. Zeal. So I talk about zeal in the previous audio, and I talk about zeal throughout the books because that's where I struggled. So Proverbs 19:2, even zeal without knowledge is not good. He who acts hastily sins. So we have much zeal for the experience, but not for the learning and development. Relationship making, as I mentioned in the previous audio, is about learning and development. Therefore, when you procrastinate, you are procrastinating the learning process. Zeal must be coupled with the knowledge of relationship making and how people see love. Many people have been hurt. They have been, damaged. They might see love as obedience only. They might see love as domestic violence. They may see love as cheating. They see love in, different forms. And that's something that you have to take some time to figure out. What is their true understanding of love? The transitional process requires you to take stock of your learning progress. If you are still getting into the same relationships over and over and over again that are abusive and toxic, and each person that you come in contact with just has a different face, that means you have a gap in your knowledge base. There is something that you are missing because you keep choosing the same types of people. That's what I did. That every person, when I go back and reflect on my relationships, I see that it's the same exact type of person that I kept choosing. And that type of person is the type of person who rejected me. That I have my own issues, but when they rejected me, it didn't have anything to do really with those issues. It had everything to do with the fact that I was just convenient, and they were really waiting on someone else to come around. So preparation. In general, people should prepare for a relationship such as a marriage. Marriage is not dating. And I said that I say this in the previous audio, that many people in the marriage market will leave the marriage market and go into the dating market and have sex and act like they're single, and then turn around and come back into the marriage market because they know it's convenient. In other words, you'll have a married partner who is maybe struggling with their respective married partner, leave the house, go get a date, have sex, and then turn around and return back to the marital home. Marriage is not dating. Dating is when you are not looking for a relationship, short-term or long-term. This means that we should all get our affairs in order prior to entering long-term relationships and marriage. We must decide the type of relationship we want. It means we need to be honest. If we truly want to be married, then we need to say it. Don't let anyone laugh at you, mock at you. If you want to be married and have a family, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to be married and have a family. And the same can be said of being single and dating. But if you want to be single and dating, don't date someone who is married. And I say that with all caution and respect to you. So gap assessment. Preparation involves understanding where there are gaps in your understanding. These include the following. So where are there gaps in your finances and debt reduction? Does your debt outweigh your current income? If your debt outweighs your current income and you are always in the red, you don't have time truly for a relationship. I know it seems like you do, When you seek a relationship, you're almost seeking unconsciously someone to solve that problem for you, where your debt outweighs your income. And you are the only one who can truly solve that problem. Also, shelter and stability. What type of shelter? Are you still living with your parents? If you are down, you have a situation where you lost your job. I was homeless for a bit. I lost my job. I lost my teaching job. It was during the recession, and it was hard for me to, find stable work. I had to do freelancing, so I had to move in with family. Now, we struggled because they didn't understand how I could have the degrees that I have and not have work. It can happen, but I don't live with them now. That was for a time. That was for a season. I had to live in a shelter for a minute, and that was for a time and for a season. But I have been stable ever since 2013. And it's 2019, and that's what you want to look for. When someone is struggling, that's different from their everyday, generating income, working. Where are they living? Do they know how to live on their own? I've seen so many people who are like 30, 40 years old, and they have never had their own apartment. That's not good. Work and savings plans. So you know that you need work to remain stable in your life. I understand that you might have a side hustle, a side gig, etc., etc., but you still need a stable force in your life to ensure that you can pull retirement, or you can leverage that job. Like I have teaching. I teach. Now teaching is a calling. At the same time, I can leverage teaching for other things that I want to do. And so work and having a savings plan are both important. If you don't have those two things, then that's a gap. Education and skill development. So you know that you need education. It's interesting how people, graduate from high school and they think they have it all together. But like I tell my students, what your childhood, your knowledge base is everything you learned in childhood at the house all the way up to high school and graduation. Now, where are you going to take yourself? Where do you want to take yourself? You need to know that you need skills. College, people like to say that college is not for everybody. That's a lie. College is about reading and learning about the world around you. And you have to know the world around you. That means you need to pick up a book. You need to get a skill. So therefore, at least those 2 to 4 years will help you to process your thinking in terms of where you want to take yourself. Emotional self-regulation and temperament. If you are still blowing up and cussing people out and telling people off and walking away and leaving the room, that's not going to work in a marriage. It might work with a friend. It might work with a short-term boyfriend, but if you're talking about a marriage and you don't know how to manage your emotions, and you can't manage your emotions unless you are in chaos, that is telling. That is something that you need to think about and consider. So therefore, you should know your own gaps. No one should come to you and say, this is a gap for you. You know you. So a good scripture to consider is Luke 14:28 through 30. For which of you, intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first, and counteth the cost, whether he have sufficient to finish it? Lest happily, after he hath laid the foundation, and is not able to finish it, all that behold it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. How many times do you hear people sort of mock or have criticism for people who, got into a marriage and then the marriage didn't work, and they said, well, didn't you know that before? That's that question that people like to ask. You didn't know he was like that before? And that's a very telling question, because it seems like it's so accusatory, but it truly is informative that there's a lack of knowledge that you don't have about that type of situation that you should have gotten before you got married, right? Or before you moved the person into your house. that if that person never had money, every time you turn around, you got to give him some money, give her some money. That tells you that they have a problem with their finances. If you look up month by month, they still haven't found a job, and there's no true intent for them to find a job, right? And some people can fool you. Some people can. I know some people who can get jobs. I mean, they will hustle and grind and go get a job and stay on that job for 6 months. So some people can fool you with that. But if they are just not workers, right? They're just not people who work. You should not marry that person, because in marriage you are supposed to take responsibility for each other. And if they don't even care enough to keep a place for themselves or keep a job for themselves, then they don't care enough to take responsibility for themselves, for the marriage, for you, for the kids you might have, for the all of the responsibilities you would have to have to do and provide for. So for which of you intending to build a tower, sitteth not down first and counteth the cost. That means you need to plan, you need to prepare, so that when you lay the foundation, you can build on top of it and no one will laugh at you. Gap assessment is a term that you often see in business. I like to use it sometimes in my classroom. A gap assessment, or in industry terms, gap analysis, is a technique business leaders use to determine the steps needed to move from a current state to a desired state. So a gap analysis includes the following steps: listing characteristics of your present situation. My present situation at 2013 was that I was homeless, didn't have a job, no money saved. So then I said to myself, I'm going to set a 7-year plan to change my economic state. I was going to get out of one economic state, which I was just below poverty line, right? Because if you don't have a job, you are, just below poverty line. And my goal is to change my economic state to get above poverty line and into stability. Now, I didn't know that I was going to create these rebound relationship series and write the books until 2014. But I sat down and said, I need to develop a plan, because my current state is a state of unsoundness. That I am unsound financially. And being unsound financially affects you mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and in other areas as well. So list characteristics of your present situation, your attributes, your competencies, your performance. List characteristics needed to achieve a future situation, what you should be. At a certain age, you should be progressing. You are no longer in your 20s. So when I was in my 30s and I was struggling and I lost my job and everything, I was regressing. So that meant I needed to determine what I should be. What my should be was I needed to get a stable job, get a place to live, stay in that place, don't move out, no setbacks, no more setbacks, and plan from there. And that's what I exactly did. Highlight the gaps that exist and that need to be filled. So for me, financial unsoundness was a gap. So that means I said in the previous audios that I needed to pursue financial wellness. So that means if I needed to pursue financial wellness, and I'm using the term wellness, then that means I am ill somewhere. I'm not well. And I was unwell, or I was ill in finances. And I have a whole long history of jumping over finances, procrastinating, using zeal, right, to get whatever I wanted, using hastiness, and still ended up being set back. So a gap assessment or gap analysis, it is the difference between what is and what should be. So as you look at your gaps and current position, where are you today financially? Where Does your debt outweigh your income economically? Um, where are you in terms of economic status, your poverty level, or you could be at, middle class level or working class level. If you are at working class level and you've been there for so long, why aren't you moving up economically and financially? Is it that you need to add skills? Is it that you need to add some sort of education? If you don't want to go for a 2-year to 4-year degree, you can always get a certificate. And a certificate can move you up into another level position. So look at your economic status. Emotionally, do you have problems regulating your mood? Do you know how to handle conflict? Some people can be very good at finances but struggle with conflict. They just don't want to do it. They just don't want to handle it. Psychologically, how are you in terms of your stress management? Have you taken on too much? There is a multitask that you need to do to life, and then there is a multitask and too much on your plate. And you have to decide what needs to be removed from your plate in order to be able to manage just the normal stresses that come with you managing a project, like yourself, like your job, like your school, like your finances. Spiritually, uh, what is your understanding about sex in marriage and sex out of marriage? I've had sex out of marriage, so I'm not going to tell you be a virgin. I'm not going to, get on my high horse, because I've been my own hypocrite. However, with today's environment where people are into so many different things, you might need to check your sex. You might need to hold back. You might need to stand up, for yourself where you didn't before, because everybody is basically into everything. And so, whereas in your past, you might not have made the man put on a condom. Today, you might have to make him put on a condom, right? Or whereas with the woman, you might need to check and see if she has something or whatever. I don't know what it is for you, but you may have to look at your views on sex and say, I might need to wait it out. I might need to just take some time away from it. And then skill development, referring to whether it is time for you to begin upgrading skills or developing a skill to move you forward. So you can have good education, have good job experience, etc. But if you were to apply for like a new job, you may not be competitive. All of you might be qualified for the job or the jobs, but one of you, including yourself, may not be competitive as someone else who is applying for the job, right? So that means you need to know uh, the changes in your industry. We are moving from coal mining to green, sustainable energy, right? But you got many people who say, no, coal is going to come back. Coal is not going to come back. You see more, everything more along the lines of technology, green, sustainable energy, etc. That means you need to pick up a new skills. You got about 2 years before this industry passes you by, right? And procrastination is really procrastinating the learning process you need to undergo. Okay, and then gaps and future positions. So where should you be? Where do you want to go? No marriage to a person will help you to understand yourself. The marriage will bring you your issues to the forefront. There are some things there are some things he knows, but not everyone is patient with what you don't know. So for example, if you are 30 some years old, a little before 40, you shouldn't still be struggling in finances. Or at least if you are working on finances, you still should not be struggling with job. That somewhere you need to, what our parents used to say, you need to get somewhere and settle down, right? You shouldn't be moving from job to job to job, because some people are not going to be patient with you in that area, because you are deliberately positioning yourself in a state of losing. And when you hook up with somebody who is a winner, it's hard for that person to understand you wanting to lose. So not everyone is patient with what you don't know. That means you need to tap into what your gaps are and get somewhere and settle down. What are your plans? What is your vision? What is your purpose? To where do you want to take yourself? So you should always have some 5 year, 7 year, 10 year, 15, 20 year plan. And what happens is people don't do that because they want to live for the day. But usually the people who live for the day, they tend to live the longest, but they don't have anything to um, to show as accomplishment, and they end up having to come and live with you in their later lives. It would have been a lot better for them to give their 20s, their 30s, and their 40s at least to you know personal development, professional development, so they won't have to go and live with somebody in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s, 90s, and shoots, if they live all the way to their hundreds, you have to take care of them. His plans cannot be your plans, even if you are pursuing compatibility or should be compatible. You still, that person that you want to marry, that person is responsible for ensuring that they are compatible within their own lives. So are you. And then when you come together, there is some level of compatibility. But you shouldn't look for that person to be the light in your situation. So discovery of you must begin with you. Gaps in gaming. So one key understanding that you need to assess for your gaps in understanding is about how people play games. The way I think the reason why that I was able to stay in setbacks so long with relationships is because I didn't understand games. I didn't understand that people can like set out to play you. I just didn't understand it. I understood rejection because I was a rejected child. I was always made to feel like I was the problem, right? So I understood that, but I never connected it to people who like seek you out like a con artist to gain you. I never understood that, and it wasn't really until this last relationship that I began to wake up. There are people who would never marry. If you want to marry, you should not date these people. Don't judge or criticize them. Just know their objectives. So if a person says that he doesn't want to marry, or if a person says she doesn't want to marry, your goal should not be to change their minds. They made up their minds. And the thing is that even if they decide to marry you much later, it has to be that they come to that understanding, and not through pushing, convincing, seducing, conning, conniving, or manipulating. They have to come to that themselves. They have to see the worthiness in you, and in the possibility of forming a marriage or a long-term relationship with you. If you have a person who says midway in the engagement process, let's just wait, that's a sign. The person may have options. So uh, let's just wait, uh, and I will use that multiple times. Let's just wait is a gaming strategy. It's almost a chess strategy, that they know what they want, and they know that they don't want you, but it's much easier to keep you hanging and hooked on them because they know you like them or you love them. And so they already know that they're going to leave you and go somewhere else. And they can still leave you and marry you, but not leave you altogether. They can leave you in a sense that they're not going to marry, but keep you on the side and continue having sex. And so if they say that, that is the biggest warning sign. Don't ignore it. People who are treating you as an option should receive no respect. Let them go. So to them, this is one thing you have to consider also when you get married. Pursuit of marriage should be coupled with the intention of staying in the marriage until death do you part. Some people believe in 2-year marriages. Some people believe that if the person does one thing wrong, that the marriage should be dissolved. For me, cheating is a deal breaker. But I've also realized that we cannot leave everybody. So in my previous situation, I stayed because I thought he was struggling. But then when I realized he wasn't struggling, I went on ahead and left. I kicked him out, right? Okay, so what happens if another person who is truly a good man slips up? It's possible. It's possible. Even a good man can slip up. Okay, am I to leave him too? So then I have a narrative, a personal narrative where I have left all these people who cheated on me. Well, for one, I need to assess the narrative. I need to assess why I keep cheating, keep picking people who keep cheating on me. That's one. And then if I decide to marry someone, I do have to think about infidelity. I have to think about it from my standpoint and from their standpoint. You'd be surprised what you would do if you are stressed and pushed to the edge. I am just as capable of cheating as anybody else, but I have never cheated on a partner. So how should you prepare for infidelity? That's something that you got to think about, because once you take the marriage vows till death, then all of that might be covered in that. Now, the scriptures allow you as a Christian marriage to if your husband commits adultery, and the scriptures calls it putting away, don't put away your wife or your husband, then you can divorce. But then you marry somebody else and he does the exact same thing. So the problem is still not getting solved. So here are types of marriages, modern practices. So you have traditional marriage, where you go before the judge, the minister, formal paperwork, exchange of rings. Then you have common law, which is living together, no ceremony or formal paperwork. But then you have common law by state, where there is no ceremony but formal paperwork. So if you are declaring your common law marriage with the courts or whatever, the agency, then you would have to get a formal divorce. Same-sex marriage, so between two homosexual couples, ceremony, formal paperwork, exchange of rings. Then you have plural marriage, maybe illegal, but in like certain states you have people who there's a husband with one or more wives, and he's usually married to at least one of them. But everyone understands that they're all part of a plural marriage situation. And then there is legal separation, court order mandating separation, splitting rights, duties by state, formal paperwork. And then you have a traditional marriage plus long-term mistress, side chick, girlfriend, which we call an understanding. Okay? So with the reason why I put that as the very last thing, because it depends on the partner and what he does or what she does with that affair partner, that mistress, that side dude, that side chick, that might affect your marriage and what you will get if your partner dies. So in each case, except for common law without formal paperwork, application for divorce is required. Common law with formal paperwork requires a divorce. Now this is by state. I know in Texas that if you are in common law and you declare it, maybe for insurance purposes, healthcare purposes, right, and you do formal paperwork, and then you show that paperwork to maybe like a housing mortgager, a bank mortgage, health insurance or whatever, that if you decide to leave that person, or you both leave each other, you would have to submit paperwork for filing a divorce. and then go before the judge, of course. Some states recognize common law marriage. Some states require formal paperwork to be filed for divorce if two partners submitted and signed official paperwork to recognize their legal status as common law. The following are states that recognize common law marriages. In these states, marriage requires a license and a ceremony. Recognition of common law marriage may be applied from state to state. So here are the states. You see Texas there. I am in Texas, but I don't know if you see your state, but I would look this up. I would probably use a key search term, common law, and the plus sign plus your state, and see what you come up with, and see what your rights are, because once you get into that situation, how long can that person stay in your house, right, or you stay in their house before there are before you can claim rights? Are you part of a will, or are you part of an insurance, as a designated beneficiary? Whatever it is, that's something that you need to know about before you decide to marry that person. So as with any divorce, even for common law marriage, application for divorce must be filed, fees are assessed, and a certificate of divorce is provided. People who are in a common law marriage usually have lived together for a significant time by state. So state, I know we have like a general understanding about common law. If a person stays in your house maybe for a certain amount of time, I know in some states it might be almost 2 years, and then if you get beyond 2 years, you would have to distribute assets, right? I know California is like that, so you want to check the laws in your state. They make it known to their communities, and family members often referring to each other as husband and wife. So usually the statute provisions usually require you to sort of make it known to your community, and use or refer to each other as husband and wife, even though you may not go before a judge with a formal ceremony. Lastly, people who are in common law marriages tend to be heterosexual couples. Marriage equality laws may apply. Courts will recognize a common law marriage when one partner dies without a will, and there is a claim of inheritance under interstate succession laws, which are defined under estate law. So interstate succession is really important for what happens when you are married to someone and the two of you have a home, and then your husband or your wife steps out on you and has an affair partner, and they have a home together. And then how long have they stayed in that home? Because it's already understood that in marriage, you've probably been married at least 2 to 5 years, right? If not more. But how long has that person's partner been with their side chick or mistress, and in that home, how long have they been in that home? So would common law apply there as well? Okay, so interstate succession law refers to the distribution of assets when a person dies without a will. Assets typically go to the next of kin, closest relative. How an estate is settled is based upon types of assets that do not pass by will. The following are assets that do not pass by will. So remember that interstate succession law is the distribution of assets when a person dies without a will. But then there are assets that do not pass by will. So these are the assets that do not pass by will. So that's life insurance proceeds, real estate, bank account, assets held in joint tenancy by the entirety, or community property with right of survivorship. So with these types of assets in this second bullet point, is usually those are oftentimes separate because they are probably assets that pass through a deed or property held in a living trust. So you have people who have a living revocable trust or a living irrevocable trust. Okay. Also with funds in an IRA, 401k, or any type of retirement, you usually have a place on the form that allows you to, set the beneficiary, right? So what happens then if your partner who is cheating on you, your married partner who is cheating on you, right, decides to change the beneficiary from you to the affair partner? Okay, so then funds in a payable on death account. Then you have stocks and securities held in transfer. Those have different types of documents, like a deed or title document. And then real estate or vehicles held with transfer on death. So then you have regular forms that you sign as part of you establishing a beneficiary. Then you have deeds and titles. Then you have your will. You got a living will. You got a living trust. So all of these ideas, concepts in estate law are something that you really need to consider. And we haven't even discussed intellectual property. Say you decide to create a business or have a product, and there's copyright, registrations, trademarks, things like that. We haven't even discussed that, and I will probably create a whole new audio for that. But that is something that you need to consider, because then you might have to split those types of assets as well if your partner decides to leave. For some assets that do not pass through a will, there must be a beneficiary designation. However, state law dictates also who inherits assets when there is no will. So that's even worse. So let's read it. Every state has laws that direct what happens to property when someone dies without a valid will and the property was not left in some other way, such as a living trust. Generally, only spouses, registered domestic partners, and blood relatives inherit under interstate succession laws. Unmarried partners, friends, and charities get nothing. If the deceased was married, then the surviving spouse would inherit the largest share of assets. Now, I agree with the last two sentences, provided that the husband or the wife has not changed any element of the will, any element of the deed or title, any element of the trust, living trust, any element under estate law. And you would have to check with your own attorney to confirm or not confirm what I'm suggesting. If there are no children, the surviving spouse will receive all the property. Distant relatives may inherit if there is no surviving spouse and if there are no children. If no relatives can be found, the state will take the assets. So these three areas are just as important. We all need some sort of living will. We all need the elements of all those forms and beneficiaries and things like that. But it's really truly important, more so when there is the possibility that you might live in a community property state and you might either be married or common law, and that your assets may be subject to distribution or splitting between you and your partner. So all of this is important to just take some time and prepare and plan out whatever it is that you want to do with that person. Anyone who has behaved badly against the deceased, criminally to be exact, may not inherit according to state law. So, any sort of foul play, anything like that. So let's talk about surviving spouse. A surviving spouse must be legally married to the deceased at time of death. Surviving spouses may fall under one of the following categories. So even if your husband is cheating with his mistress, if you are still married to that person, you are considered the surviving spouse. You are the one who makes the decisions. If you remember the scene from Tyler Perry's movie Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and how the husband got shot in court, and then he was in the hospital, and the doctor was saying, providing the option to take him off life support or something like that. And his wife came forward and said, no, don't do that. Even though the mistress was saying, yes, do that. Right. And so now she ended up taking all of his stuff illegally, because he put her name on the bank accounts. He put her name on the furniture, or at least she had access, to the furniture because she had a key. And so therefore the wife would have to, go to court to get all that money back, or to get all those, furniture back and things like that, right? So all of that is just really important about planning for if the partner creates an infidelity. Legal separation and divorce. So if there is a pending divorce or separation, the judge may have to determine if there is a surviving spouse, right? Common law marriage. States that recognize common law marriage may rule a surviving spouse, so that person could still get your assets. Same-sex marriage. States that recognize same-sex partners may rule a surviving spouse. However, states that do not recognize the partners may not rule a surviving spouse. So surviving spouse is a very important legal concept. Okay. Also, issues or children are also important concepts, because remember, your spouse could have a child with their affair partner, and if that child is a biological child of your husband or of your wife, they could inherit. So it is a term, issues. It is a term used to describe those who should inherit, who are direct descendants in absence of a will. Direct descendants typically include children and grandchildren. The following are types of issues or descendants who might inherit. State laws apply. Foster children typically do not inherit. So we have these different types of issues. We have adopted children, we have stepchildren, and we have, guidelines also by state. We have foster children do not inherit. We have children adopted by an unrelated adult or family. So by state, adoption severs tie. Children cannot inherit from their birth parents, nor can birth parents inherit from child. Now, you can sign a document, as you get older, 18 years old, you can sign away your rights to something, as a child or whatever. As a young adult, but just by state, adoption severs tie. Children adopted by step parents, so by state, they can inherit from biological parents. Children born after the parent's death, before or after parent's death, inherit. So the child your married partner has with their affair partner would be able to inherit even after their death. And then children born outside of marriage inherits from birth mother must prove to inherit from father. So of course that would be the paternity test. So here are some other types of planning, right, you need to consider as you are planning the marriage, and that's the living will. A living will is a declaration that specifies treatment people want or do not want in case of a terminal illness, especially a coma or a near-death situation. So if we go back to the Tyler Perry situation, the affair partner wanted to take him off life support. She didn't care if he could get better or anything like that. And so if he made that affair partner the executor of that living will, then he would be dead. But it was good that there was a surviving spouse. Even though there was a pending divorce, there was a surviving spouse that could make um, terminal illness decisions for her soon-to-be ex-husband. For example, a person might state that without reasonable expectation of recovery, he or she should not be kept alive through medical intervention of any kind. This means that a living will can specify pain-relieving medication even if it shortens life. So even if she didn't want him to be, taken off life support, if she said okay to, medication, he could still be dead. You want a level-headed person. You don't want a person who is so eager to get your money to make decisions. The wife that he left was the wife who took time. She spent time. She stayed there at the hospital. She made sure he got the right kind of care that he needed. Although personal control is exercised in a living will, there is no guarantee of it. Sometimes the doctors will ignore it. A second form of advance directive would be required. So let's get into that. A durable power of attorney for health care. So this authorizes the appointment of another person to make health care decisions. It is usually a family member and requires a signed witness statement such as the following. So again, you don't want someone who is not stable, and I'm not talking about just mentally unstable. I'm talking about people who have never taken responsibility for their lives, who have always lived with other people, who always need someone to give them money. Those people are economically, financially unstable. So you want to be careful also about authorizing even a family member to have to make these types of healthcare decisions. So here is the example statement. I hereby appoint as my attorney in fact to act for me and in my name in any way I could act in person to make any and all decisions for me concerning my personal care, medical treatment, hospitalization, and health care, and to require, withhold, or withdraw any type of medical treatment or procedure, even though my death may ensue. Now that's a very tough statement to accept and sign off on. That you are trusting that the person that you appoint the authority to do this will do so with a very level head. Otherwise, I don't know the full length, but maybe the hospital can make decisions or other family members can make decisions or whatever. But once you sign that, that power of attorney, I've never liked the fact that a person can be a joint owner on your bank account. Because in the same way you see in any way I could act in person, the joint owner is no different than you. So the power of attorney is really no different than you. They are acting as if they are you. So therefore you got to pick the right types of people or person who would act in the same way that you would act, who would take time, maybe pray, ask people. Don't be so in a hurry to shut you down in a sense. Additional states have medical directives. If you want to know about your state, just use the keywords medical directives by state plus state. Here is information on the state of Texas. So I'm always going to give you something on Texas. Declaration for mental health treatment, which authorizes any decisions about mental health treatment and incapacitation. You want to be careful about anyone who would just put you in the pokey. I mean, put you in a mental health facility. Directive to physicians and family or surrogate forms. So this authorizes any decisions about medical treatment. Medical power of attorney form. This authorizes the person you name to make healthcare decisions, including based upon religious or moral beliefs. Out of hospital do not resuscitate information and form. This authorizes any decisions for medical personnel and other healthcare healthcare professionals to forego resuscitation attempts. So I'm quite sure you can put this in your living will, right? Statutory durable power of attorney. This authorizes an empowered agent to take actions regarding your property. So, it's kind of like when a company is going out of business, it's called winding down. So you need the right people who will wind down you if you are going to leave this earth, or if you have to leave this earth. No. So most importantly is this sort of lack of knowledge about marriage laws may be one of the reasons why they marry someone else. It is much easier to get into the relationship than to think about it and go through one. So this is one aspect of life that people don't always want to examine, which is the planning part of it. The planning part. It's very hard because it takes time to think and plan. And so it is much easier to just get into a relationship and make it up along the way. But then once you divorce or there's conflict and you don't have any record of handling conflict, then you end up losing. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021. So I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch: Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters: Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.